It's time for the Las Vegas Sportsline, brought to you by the Sunset Station with sports director Chuck Esposito. Presented by WagerTalk.com.
And here we go, Championship Monday. And we're back with the Las Vegas Sportsline. I'm Dave Cokin. Marco DAngelo is here. All right, Platinum is producing the show. And Chuck Esposito from Sunset Station is on the phone with us right now. It is our station, Casino Sunset Station Monday edition. Chuck, you picked a good day to be on. There's a pretty good game in basketball tonight.
There is a pretty good game tonight, especially if you like defense, guys. So it's a fun time. Masters this week, hockey playoffs on the horizon, draft month. So a lot of cool stuff going on.
There is. Let's first talk about what took place on Saturday as we saw Texas Tech eliminate Michigan State and Virginia. Well, they won. That's all that matters. Virginia won, and they're moving on. How did these two games go from a betting standpoint for the house or for the players?
Actually, in both cases, it was the side that we needed, guys. Just the way that it worked out. I think anytime there's only two games, regardless of what happens in the first game, you're going to have a lot dumping into the second game. It was a good outcome in the first game for us, but you still had some liability going into the second game. But you really you needed Texas Tech on our side of the counter more than anything else for what it wasn't. Nothing was great scenario because again things dumping into that game. But I think best case was Texas Tech winning the game outright.
Chuck, we saw both games go under the total, and I know a lot of the sharp action was on the unders in both games. How did it play out with the public? Because we know that the casual bettors love to bet the overs.
You're right, Marco, but it did play out with the public that they were backing the under as well. Mm-hmm. I think when you looked at these two teams or those four teams, you heard so much chatter about the defense. And three of the four teams just play lockdown defense. I mean, you look at Texas Tech, number one in the country defensive efficiency. You look at the way that Virginia plays now. That 2-3 is probably better at shutting down teams than maybe what Boeheim does at Syracuse. The only team that was looking to run up and down the court was Auburn. And I think Virginia was able to take them out of their tempo somewhat. So there was a lot of play on the under.
All right, so that kind of leads us into tonight where, there's no hidden stuff here. These are two of the best defensive teams in the country. Texas Tech completely fouls up passing lanes. Michigan State only had 6 assists in that game on Saturday. Virginia's defense obviously is it's known to even casual fans how good the Virginia defense is. So as soon as they posted the total on this game, I said to myself, boy, this is going to get under action. Whether that's the right play or not doesn't matter. It's going to get under action. Is that the way it's playing out?
It is. It's kind of ping-ponging back and forth a little bit, guys. I think when you talk about these two teams and you look at the total on the board, I mean, it's not 1978 when Kentucky beat Duke and they scored 182 points in that championship game. This is a far cry from that. I think these two teams offensively practice against good defenses, and it does seem like a relatively low total, although they do play such good defenses. I think that the key is that there just was such droughts in scoring in both of the two semifinal games that teams would go, possession upon possession with coming away with nothing. If that doesn't happen here, and there's not those long droughts, I think because of the familiarity maybe of practicing against good defenses, I think you could see this game go over, but again, you have two really good defensive teams, and you've seen the action on the game and the action on the total be somewhat two-way. I will say that so far the action has been a little bit in favor of Texas Tech with ticket counts, and the same thing as far as the total over in the game, but nothing crazy, nothing one-sided like we've seen on some games in the past.
Chuck, staying with that thought on the under, when I saw the lines for the final four games, the one line that jumped out to me I thought was off was the Michigan State-Texas Tech game being as high as it was. We know that those were two teams that were going to walk it up the floor and play strong defense, and yet we had a total in the 130s. Now we've got I thought that was too high. Now I think we've gone too far the other way. I agree with you. I think that this is more of a game that's going to end up getting to the over if we don't have those long scoring droughts, plus the fact it's the national championship. When it gets down to the end, if these teams are anywhere within reason, they're going to continue fouling right down to the end of the game, and you can get those cheap, 10 or 12 points at the end of the game because of fouls. And when you're talking about a total that's only 118, 10 to 12 points is that's a big percentage of the total game total.
No, it absolutely is. I think again, it's the droughts. That I think you looked at the other two games in the semifinals, and you just had teams that went through such scoring droughts in those games. I think here you've got two teams that most people didn't think would be here right now. They're here mainly because of their defense. So I agree. I think that you could see this number start to tick up, but that hasn't been the case. I mean, again, ticket count does favor the over a little bit, guys, but nothing crazy or one-sided. And I think both these two teams will be squeezing a little bit tonight with what's on the line. These weren't two teams that were really expected. Although Virginia was the number one, they were the forgotten number one of the three ACC teams. I really think that most people thought we'd be seeing Duke and North Carolina here, and that Virginia was going to get knocked out well before they had an opportunity to play on Final Four weekend.
So let me make a slight flip side case here for the under. Based on this, neither of these teams wants to get into their bench at all. You've got one team, if they can help it, they're going to play no more than 6 guys, and the other's going to play no more than 7. So you've got very short rotations. They don't want foul trouble, and if they can walk the ball up the floor on as many possessions as they can, I don't think they're going to have a problem doing it. I mean, it's still a really low total, but if you've got that kind of a pace and the shooting isn't great with the lack of offensive rebounding that I envision in this basketball game, because both teams are really solid at preventing offensive rebounds, I can see the game being 50-50 going down the stretch. That can still get over the total, obviously, and then you're going to sweat overtime if that happens. But that's the case I would make for maybe, even as tempting as it is to go over such a low number, why it could still stay under.
Well, I mean, for Texas Tech, you definitely need more out of Culver, and I think you need Mooney to step up and have a big game for it to potentially get over. And I think on the other side, I look at Jerome, Hunter, and Guy, and I didn't think they played well in the first couple of games, that first weekend. But I think they've started to find their game a little bit. But what gets me is that these two teams are so active defensively. Look at the amount of blocked shots and what teams shot the 3 against them. That, I mean, they really are good. I mean, I think, although it's defense and everyone loves scoring, these are two fun defensive teams to watch because of the way that they play. There's a lot of block shots, a lot of movement. So I think you can make a case either way. I really do, guys. I favor the over a little bit, but I agree. I could see it 50-50 coming down the stretch.
I just want to go back to Saturday's Virginia-Auburn finish for a moment and get your 2 cents on what took place in the final seconds of that game. The double dribble that the entire planet, I mean, stop it, the entire planet missed it.
I missed it as well, right?
I missed it too. It's happening, everything's happening quickly, and I know the outcry, he double dribbled. Yeah, I know, when you get to see it in replay, he double dribbled. In the foul, who initiated the contact? Was it a good call?
Of course, a double dribble. But first, I think, if they don't have the foul, to stop the clock because they had a shot to give, he takes a horrendous shot. Game's probably over.
Well, I thought they fouled too soon anyway.
I did too. But I did think on the 3, I did think that when you look at the replay, I didn't think it in real time, but when I watched it on a number of occasions, he clearly jumps into him. I didn't think Guy made any effort to jump into the defensive player like you've seen that at all levels of basketball where you try to draw that foul, and many times it's called. I didn't think Guy did that. I clearly felt that he was jumped into, and I thought that was a good call. Now, there was other things that occurred before that, but I did think that was a good call in my opinion.
And let's give Guy credit. At that point, Virginia was just 3 of 9 from the foul line. And he goes there and nails all 3. I mean, you talk about pressure. Pure. And then they had a full timeout before the final shot. So he had time, talk about, icing the kicker, so to speak. And he still knocks it down. For a kid, I know that this is the big time and they're supposed to be there. But, man, you don't get a bigger stage than that.
And he admitted he was terrified.
Yeah. It didn't look like, he didn't hit the rim.
He was awfully cool, guys. Awfully cool.
All net on all 3 of them. Great.
Right. And many times you don't see that foul called, to end the game like that. So I could have seen it, a non-call, but I did think once they called it, again, when I watched it a few times, that unfortunately he did jump into him.
Last Man Standing was the tournament contest run throughout station casinos. A great format. I know the entry number was huge this year. Is anybody still standing, or is everybody on the sidelines now?
There's 5 left, guys,
oh, boy,
and
wow.
One of the 5 has Virginia as the tiebreaker. So I'm sure I know what side that guy's rooting for tonight.
Now
so, there's 5 left, guys. 5 left. It's been a great contest. You saw, close to 50% eliminated after the first day. So if that kind of puts it into perspective, but there's 5 left heading into tonight.
And that's a pretty big payoff that's involved, especially for that individual who has Virginia as the tiebreaker. We're talking about $50,000.
Over $50,000.
Yeah.
It's over $59,000 this year. So I think our largest entry and largest grand prize ever. It's a super popular contest. We talked about it leading into it, guys. If you're a serious, college basketball tournament player and you want a chance for a big payday, this contest is it.
Chuck, when you get down to a couple players like that, do guys ever work deals like they do in poker tournaments and, figure a chop out?
All I can say, guys, is there's 5 left.
Well, no, beyond that, they're on their own.
They're on their own.
Yeah.
That's the way the poker tournaments are, too.
I got to tell you, though, if I'm the guy with Virginia as the tiebreaker, I've got the favorite. I'm not chopping with anybody. Okay?
And you're either going to get it all or so he can go to the windows and work his own deal out.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little hockey because we have our playoff series all set now in the NHL, and the one that will be of the greatest interest locally, obviously, will involve the Golden Knights. Marc-Andre Fleury is back. I know they lost his start on Thursday, but he actually played really well in the game. This is a wide-open series, I would think, from a betting perspective, except here in Las Vegas, where I would think that basically a pick-em price is going to result in a large percentage on the Golden Knights.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, guys. I think when you just looked at these two teams and as tough as it is to play in San Jose, that on the surface, the Sharks should have been maybe a 6-5 favorite. Vegas did beat them last year in a grueling 6-game series. They went 2-1-1 against them this year. You had a game, I think a little less than 2 weeks ago where these two teams got a little chippy in San Jose. Both teams had slight hiccups toward the end of the season. But I was one of the guys who questioned playing Fleury the last game of the season, but he did play well even in defeat. And I think when you look at the fact that San Jose has the second best offense in the league against Fleury, that maybe there's a reason that he wanted to get some of the rust off. On the flip side, San Jose also has the lowest team save percentage in the NHL as far as goaltending goes. So I think there's a huge advantage with Fleury. These two teams know each other really well. I think a lot of these series are going to be fun to watch, but in my opinion, this is probably the one right at the top or second that you really want to watch because it's going to be fun. And for me, I think, and everyone talked about the Kings or the Ducks or the Coyotes being the Knights' biggest rival, I think it's clearly become the San Jose Sharks.
I can't disagree with that. These teams don't like each other very much. And you pointed out what I think is a really vital stat coming into this, and it ties into the opinion. Look, this is a pretty popular opinion, but it's one I agree with. That San Jose, of the 16 teams in the playoffs, you could argue San Jose might be the most vulnerable in goal. Martin Jones and Aaron Dell, if Jones is bad. This is not a great combination, and that's an area where the Golden Knights would appear to have a big advantage. We know how much that means in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
It's true. Jones, if you look at his playoff record, though, and his save percentage, he is much better in the postseason than he has been during the regular season. And I think getting Erik Karlsson back for them as well is a big piece. When they went through that losing streak at the end of the year, that was without Karlsson. If he's healthy, I think that's a big piece on the back end. But this is going to be a fun series to watch, guys. I think you can, you really look at the West, and I think it's so wide open. But I think if Vegas gets through this series, I think the next series against Calgary's more of an offensive-minded, wide-open style, I think would play well into Vegas's game.
Well, we know the West is wide open. Chuck, can anybody knock off Tampa Bay? I mean, if anybody looks like they're a shoe-in to get there.
I'll give you one team. It's the Bruins.
It is the
they could
Bruins.
beat the second round.
It's a shame, guys, though, the way that the playoffs are structured in hockey. I like so many things that they do, but I think that the fact that they don't reshuffle after the first round, and the fact that conceivably you could have Boston play Tampa in round 2, I think is a travesty. I really think they need to rethink the 1-8. I know that they tried to accomplish with all the